Hi, I'm Jackie Miller, certified divorce coach, certified divorce transition and recovery coach, and high conflict divorce coach, as well as host of this podcast, Out of Crazytown, your guide to divorcing a narcissist. Welcome to another episode from my Survivor series. This episode, my guest, Amy, has joined us to talk about her journey through marriage and divorce with a narcissist and her life now as a survivor of narcissistic abuse. More episodes from this podcast can be found at outofcrazytown.com or jackiemillercoaching.com. Thank you for joining me. Okay, hello, and welcome to Out of Crazytown, your guide to divorcing a narcissist. This is your host, Jackie Miller, and I want to say a big thank you to Amy, who is joining us today. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm really happy to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's so awesome that you're on the show. This is our Survivor series. And again, I really appreciate you being here. These stories are so powerful. And there are so many people out there that, it's such a comfort to know that they're not alone. And
Right.
B, just get to hear from folks that not only been through it, but have come out the other side. So again, I just want to say thank you. So I just want to jump right in with some questions for you
Okay.
about your story, Amy. Just sort of walk us through a little bit, like in the beginning with your now ex-husband, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And how you guys met.
Well, I was still living and working in Europe, so I traveled, full time every week all over the place. And some mutual friends put us, in touch, and we went on a common hike together. So the chances of meeting were really small. And then we ended up seeing each other just on weekends because I was always gone. But initially, that's how we met, through common friends.
Okay. And how did the relationship go from there?
Well, very, very fast. Literally, we met in the summer, and by December he had proposed to me and said he didn't believe in long engagements and wanted to be married by the following summer. So when we decided to go forward with this, I told my mom that we have 5 months to organize a wedding and I'm traveling 100%. So
Wow.
all whirlwind, very quick thing. Another early red flag that I
Yeah.
should have paid more attention to, but he said it was cultural, and I was fine with it.
Okay.
So very
And
quick.
yeah, very and really good point. And again, tell the listeners out there, I'm sure many of them can identify with this. That's almost always how the relationship goes, super quick. And was there any, I'm curious, was there any what we refer to, those of us in the know, as love bombing? Was there any of that going on?
I've never had that much attention put on myself,
Yeah.
and I chalked it up to the fact that I was gone through the week and that was hard for him, and that we only had 2 days of quality time. But he would have all the food ready, or he'd have something organized with friends, and it was just perfect in the
Yeah,
beginning. But,
absolutely.
but a lot of jealousy from the start. Again, I chalked that up to the fact that I was always gone, in my head, making excuses for these things early on.
Okay. And what was that? What walk me through that? What was the jealousy part like?
Well, because I was single and I'd come back, and all my friends would be ready on the weekend to go out as a group, and most of them were single. So he was surrounded by a bunch of my single friends who couldn't wait to see me,
Yeah.
and it's very, very negative about it. Didn't rule them out right away because it was probably too early for him to put those kind of constraints on me. But
Hmm.
very jealous of like the deep, long friendships I have, the efforts they went into doing things for me. He just always thought there was an ulterior motive.
Interesting. And that is so fascinating to me because, again, I think that that is a component often seen in relationships with these folks. And it is just sort of the beginning of the brainwashing, not brainwashing, but the controlling, I guess what I want to say, factor.
Yes,
Because tell me if I'm wrong, but because you immediately, once you identify like the jealousy, you do start to alter your own behavior.
you do. And that ranged from what I wore, that he was my same height, so he didn't want me to wear any heels because then I would be an inch taller. And you slowly just, it was easier just to not wear a dress anymore because of the look on his face, or the
Mm.
heels, because you could see how he was breathing with uncomfort,
Hmm.
comfort. Excuse me. So you tended to start losing a little bit of that free spirit that you were. before, just because it was easier.
Right. Oh, and that's so true. And it is the death by a thousand paper cuts, because people who have never been in it don't really understand those really subtle, as you just said, the look on their face, or
The
it's the
look.
energy in the room changes, and all of a sudden all the oxygen's gone and you're like, I'm in trouble for something.
Or the
And the
silence, yeah, which there
oh
was a lot of, and then you were like almost having to pay for it for days. And that was all slowly building as we went along. But I was not aware of all this
yeah,
early until I went through my divorce and started to research, and it was just like ding ding ding.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
just kind of adapted because you wanted to make it work.
right,
And he would always say, you're always away and thinking you're so important because of your job, so you're constantly downplaying yourself. I would find I did a lot of that as well, and
right,
instead
right.
of, yeah, it was becoming unbalanced.
Becoming imbalanced. Yeah. And you start to lose a little bit of your own identity. Like you said, deny yourself things that you normally might like to do, like wear heels or a dress,
Exactly.
and then you're accommodating their lack of self-confidence. And,
Exactly.
but again, it's because there's this negative feedback, right? And you're slowly being conditioned. And so, and you said that red flags. It's like we're so willing to overlook these things, right? Because
Yeah.
how it started off was so amazing.
Exactly, exactly. And they always had a reason why they were treating you this way, like you're always away, or, you have this important job. You need to come out of your work mode when you come here, and you think, he's right, he's right. It's probably, I'm not seeing what I'm doing wrong. And you start making excuses for yourself.
Right. And
So,
it's interesting when I've talked to other survivors that have been through this and are on the other side of it. I always like to point out, okay, let's pause right now and talk about what good looks like in a relationship, because this is something I know that I talk with young folks and even my daughters, like, okay, should you have to change who you are, in a relationship? Should you have to stop wearing heels? Should you, have to worry about if what you're wearing doesn't make your significant other feel good? Should you worry about, and things like that? Should you feel bad about having an awesome job where you travel? And so it is amazing the excuses that we make because of the way the relationship was set up in the beginning to be so awesome,
exactly,
you
exactly.
know, to overlook over all of that. And it's abuse.
It really is. It really is. And that those are just the early days.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Right.
it
Right.
just
Those are
keeps
just the
getting
early
deeper
days.
and deeper. Mm-hmm.
And so, okay. And so then you get married
Yes, yes. So
very quickly. Go ahead.
yeah, and I even look back onto my wedding. It was such a beautiful event, but if I think about it now and I looked at the video, he never even turned around to look at me coming down the aisle, and that should have been a sign as well. He
Yeah.
was just in his world.
Yeah.
So we were married, and we had 2 kids. I worked throughout the whole of it. The first child actually, in a way, improved our relationship, and the second was the death of our relationship.
Okay.
Very, very quickly. Yeah.
Okay. And it is interesting that you say that as well, because kids are very often a triggering factor for some of their behaviors. So tell me what happened with the second child.
It was I mean, it's second child is a lot, it's a lot more work, obviously. And it was that following Christmas. So our son was 4 months old, and he just completely withdrew. We were with all the family having what I thought was the happiest time of our life with both families there. And he just withdrew, and he went into a depression and went to the room. And when I went in there just to say, can you help me with one of the kids? He literally lost it for like 9 hours. He was screaming. And then he left for 2 weeks. He left me with the kids and my parents, and said, the mother immediately got involved and said he needed to regain his energies. And it was always the mother buffering anything and being overprotective of him, while not caring that they're 2 little kids, that needed their dad as well, and myself. So it was almost like a fatigue that a psychological fatigue that he could not handle, probably even less attention on him.
Yeah.
because there was a newborn and a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And I know down the road there were a lot of other sort of issues that he was struggling with, but that was really the end of our marriage. And I did seek some advice because it was that extreme how he had reacted. And then we worked our way back through another year, and my family moved back to the US. And then he's never been fond of the US, and he suddenly wanted to move to the US. That was just another strange thing. So we came over on holiday, insisted on buying a house right away, and went back to Europe where we were, and quit his job without telling me and said, we're moving. So it looked like, I would be happy to be near my parents. And so we get back to the US, and I said, you need to seek immigration advice because you can't just keep flying back and forth. And he just kept flying back and forth till they stopped him and essentially deported him back to Europe for 18 months.
Wow.
And at that point, we'd rented out our family home in Europe, and that was our income because he wanted to start a new business over here. And so the first 2 months, everything was fine. I was helping getting him immigration advice and all the paperwork to apply for his green card. And just the more detached he became from us, the more he blocked us financially. And, if there was a need for the child, like the birthday party, he would say, well, I'm not going to benefit from being there. I'm not sending the money. And it was,
wow.
Yeah, it was it was so hard to see because all we wanted to do was find a way to get together. And after 6 months, he said, you need to bring the kids back to Europe. And I said, I have no problem doing that. Just send us a round trip ticket. And he would only want to send a one-way ticket. So a lot of red flags were, coming up there too. And eventually I filed for divorce, and that became very complicated for immigration reasons, and tried to negotiate and had to, in the end, cancel the divorce so he could come back.
Wow.
And that's when he came back with no intention to reconcile. And we went through a 3-year ghastly custody battle.
And back to your story about the kids and the money and not sending, again, just with the financial abuse, one of the many components or many forms of abuse, I should say, that are exacted on victims of the people with narcissistic personality disorder, assuming, or cluster B, something in that realm, that it sounds like he had. Were there other signs of financial abuse, or was that one of his big ticks? What was the sort of personality that the divorce took on?
Well, I grew up with very traditional parents who are still together after 55 years. And when we married, I immediately went and set up a joint bank account, and he refused to do anything joint. He refused to merge any of our income or any of that. And so it was always this black hole that he had. I never knew what he had. If he needed anything extra, he used his mom's credit card. And it was just always, there was nothing together financially. So, when we did move away, and I said, we need to set up a pension account because he was an entrepreneur and he did private banking. And he said, we'll always have our properties to retire with one day. We don't need pensions and things like that. And so when we did move abroad and our income essentially was renting our house out, I said, well, I need to at least have access to our rent. That's our joint rent. And it just never happened, and just got worse and worse and worse, to the fact that we were in our home in the US, and, our door lock was broken, and, we couldn't fix the door for like 8 months, just begging him to send money over.
Yeah.
Those sort of definitely red flags. I should have seen it, that he never wanted anything joint. He never had any financial papers at home. They were always locked away in the office. All the kind of things that are obvious now, but
sure. And I, again, want to thank you so much for coming on to tell your story, because I think I have heard such a, similar story from numerous other people. And you look back and you feel so silly later on. And I want anyone listening out there, don't feel bad. Don't feel ashamed. Don't feel, it was all intentional. You're married. You want to trust your spouse, but you look back, and the fact that the finances are kept completely separate, the victim being kept in the dark, obviously all intentional. And it just happens time and time and time again in these types of relationships. And it's mind-boggling that it was set up that way from day one, right?
Yeah,
and the energy that was put into, keeping you in the dark, and it blows my mind. But again, that's why we're doing this. And I keep saying this, but I want to thank you so much for coming on, because I want anyone out there listening to know that they're not the only one, and don't feel foolish. Don't feel silly. Don't be embarrassed to ask for help or admit that you don't know any of the finances, because the keeping them all locked away, a tactic they all often use. And just keeping you in the dark. Financial abuse, I feel like the term just really isn't widely enough known. It is the number one controlling way to keep a victim in their spot, because if they can't support themselves or their children, and it's gone on for years, and so you are put in a position where you really are in a bind, it's very effective.
I know. And I would rationalize it, because he would cover, the big costs, like the regular utilities costs. And I would pay, from either savings or rent from my other property, anything to do with the kids, and anything, if I ever needed a haircut, or there would never be any joint funds for anything to do with me and the kids. So, and he would say, well, you have to do your part. Of course I am. But I mean, I have a 1 month old, and it's, I can't just start traveling again. And, you just, I don't know, but you rationalize it while you're going through it.
Of course. Like I said, and it was all designed and intentional, and to the point, and like you made a point too, that I've also heard from survivors, that you get conditioned to that point where you don't even want to ask for money for something like your own children, and I even hate using the term ask for money. It's your money too, and
it's the crazy thing. But it was always his and his family's money, because essentially someone else was controlling him to behave a certain way. And ultimately his mom was the one who funded the whole divorce and witch hunt.
Again, there's a pattern there. Lots of times it is a mom factor. And I don't know, exactly what it is. It's a story I hear time and time again, but regardless of what happened in their childhood and how they became this way, there often is mom in the background.
Who idolized him.
Idolized them. Yeah. And in fact, so did you feel that there was sort of a narcissistic family happening with your in-laws?
No, his mother was 100% narcissistic.
Okay.
And her husband was not, but she was, and he was the same way. And he never treated her well. And I thought, gosh, she gives him so much. I mean, I don't know where it goes, but she gives him so much. Why isn't he nicer to her? Even the way he spoke to her was so strange to me. Just that would have never happened in my family.
Sure.
But even going through the divorce where they tried to coerce me to drop the divorce, which I did. And I still wanted to believe that he was going to change even then. And it just became, I read emails and communications that she was the one funding this whole thing. But, whether she was not kind or was kind is not the point. It's him who had to, take some control over his relationship and put her a little bit in place.
Right. Right. And what was your treatment? What was the treatment to you or of you by his family during your marriage? I'm just curious.
In the beginning, I mean, I was showered with kindness and generosity and gifts. And that ended literally at our wedding. It ended at our wedding. And she even, in fact, probably bought my engagement ring and brought it for him. I mean, I should have noticed all this back then, but as of the wedding, there was never another kind word said. And especially after I had the second child, that it was like they've had what they needed.
You think it would be the opposite. And I have to tell you this, because I have a client that told me this recently as well, said should have seen the red flag. The diamond was given to her husband by her mother-in-law. So he didn't even go really go shopping for the ring or anything. The mother-in-law sort of made it happen.
Yes, that was exactly my situation.
Okay. So then after the ring was bought, the mother-in-law asked my client, well, where's your wedding band? Didn't he get a wedding band? And the client said, well, no, it's okay. It's okay. I'm fine. Yeah, I guess he didn't buy one, but she said, it's not okay. So the mother-in-law went and bought the wedding band.
Well, he did that. He did buy the wedding, but I didn't tell him to do it.
Okay. And it was so interesting. Like you said, like not even turning around to look at you come down the aisle, or like in the case of my client, like no effort really put into even the wedding ring, and the mother-in-law's in the background doing all of it, trying to make it happen. Her case, she was sort of saying that she felt like the mother-in-law was trying to offload him. But,
yeah,
you know,
it has some similarity.
yeah. And
But
it's not funny, but you know, I guess at some point we have to try to giggle or try to find humor in it to move
for
on, huh?
sure. Oh, you have to. It's the only way. You have to keep yourself sane.
Yeah. Keep
It's
yourself
just,
sane.
little things, even at Valentine's Day, there would never be even a flower again. There was in the beginning. And even if you maybe were disappointed, it would be like, why is it all about you? Why do you need these material symbolic things? I'm walking down the street on a walk with you. And I said, I love that we're walking, but like he would just make you feel so bad. And I'm not talking about any huge expectation, just
Right.
like a flower from the supermarket, just anything to show that like maybe once in a while you go out of your way, and you feel so alone. You
Yeah.
just feel so alone, because to the outside world, they are charming and friendly. Even though in the background, they want you to, and myself and my family, to cut any ties with old family friends that he felt uncomfortable around. And, he needed to know that they would put him first.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so clear back then, but
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and to that point, because I know you said it didn't happen like super early on, but was there isolation then that started to happen from your friends?
very,
And
very much within the first year or two.
okay.
Yeah, it just became very difficult to find a way to keep. I still have my dearest friends. They understood.
Yeah.
But even during the divorce, it was so isolating because no one could understand that it could get to this extreme level of conflict when
Yeah.
it looks completely peaceful on the outside. And even with him in the divorce, he refused to speak to me. He hid behind his lawyers. And it was just this silent divorce of, petitions, and it's just always been silent. He doesn't talk unless it's, a little insult here and there. So it was never like this loud, communicative relationship.
Right.
This was very silent and
Right.
very isolating.
And so then you said it ended up taking 3 years. So how did it finally come to a close? Like what?
So it was almost 4 if you consider the first year that I filed when he was abroad, just because he was saying that I was not bringing the kids back and he was not consenting to this behavior. And my lawyer said, you can't have those kind of accusations. You need to protect yourself. But of course, because we were filing for his green card, it looked like I was filing to cut him away. It appeared that way because he was abroad. So we couldn't come to any agreement. I dropped the divorce. Sponsored him. He came back, at his green card, had no intention to reconcile. So I refiled again a year later, and that took 3 more years.
Yeah.
Essentially defending myself through 19 of his accusations, a full psychological evaluation of the kids, myself and him, because I believe that he had some mental concerns.
Sure.
And of course, you will be pulled into that. And only because I had a nanny cam in my house, because we suspected her from stealing, did I have the biggest shocker of my life, which was, abuse to the children caught on nanny cam. And then they tried to say they were going to send me to jail because there was no consent, even though the thing had been there for a year and he had passwords to it and everything and was aware of it. So that was very scary. But in the end, that's the only way that the psychologist believed me in the end.
Wow.
And everything I had been saying all along.
Wow. What advice do you have for people, if any?
Oh my gosh.
That long journey.
I mean, whatever you do, just if it feels wrong, it's usually wrong.
Yeah.
And try not to isolate yourself. And I mean, thank goodness I'm a documenter. I journal everything. And I had so much documentation. Probably that was because he was abroad and everything was in writing, but that helped me. So just being very calm and methodical, and just know that you're doing this for the best of your kids. You just keep going. After 4 years, you just want to roll over and collapse, and you can't when you have 2 little kids. So just to know that, this will end one day. But I mean, without the support network I had and the deep, deep supportive friends and my parents, I would have never survived this.
Yeah. So you said a number of things there. So, and I've just written a blog on this as well. And one of the things I said was definitely a support system, because I'm going to generalize, and I know, throughout the disclaimer, that's not always women, but many of the clients who are usually women, will say they found themselves, with the friends gone now and even some close relatives, and they are completely isolated. Gosh, I don't know. Go either back to those people that you used to have relationships with. They will understand. Let them know, lots of times they just weren't aware, like you said, because they're so charming and they seem so nice to the outside world. And you just can't imagine how many people are just willing and waiting with open arms. And you're probably going to hear them say, we thought so.
Right. And that's really hard to hear after. But I mean, it's like you say, no one expects this level of kind of deceit and acting and manipulation. Mm-hmm. It's just not your normal thing. And so it's, sometimes there's skepticism of what we're going through. But the ones that are really going to be there for you are always going to be there for you. And the ones that don't, you just have to let it go.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yes. And that sometimes is a painful lesson to learn about the ones that you do have to let go. But I mean, when it comes to even, get online, look for support groups, please call the therapist, divorce coaches.
Don't isolate yourself.
Do not isolate yourself. You're absolutely right. It's not a good path to do that. And so
exercise is like my one therapy. No matter what, I did my hour walk every day, and that's when I had my thinking time. And because the divorce was a whole like strategic survival effort. I mean, literally for 3 years, we had boxes at my parents' house getting out documentation. I mean, you can imagine the documentation for 4 or 5 years from when it first went bad. And it's just becomes this exhausting survival episode. So you have to look after yourself no matter what. If you're not sleeping, if you can squeeze in a nap, you do it. You do whatever you can just to keep going, because it will end. And sometimes it doesn't end. But like, you do divorce, but you're still co-parenting with
and that's another episode. But you're absolutely right. No, I know. And so, and again, but back to the support, which is why that's because you do become stronger.
Yeah.
Your skin gets thicker.
It does.
You realize, where your strengths really lie. And then, you just develop a community of people that you can depend on.
For sure. And educate yourself as much as you can, because reading the books on narcissism and personality disorders were just eye-opening. And you have an ultra awareness after going through this, but you can see that you had every sign there in the world.
Right. What was there like a book you read or an article you read that where the light bulb went off?
I mean, I can't remember all the books because I read so many, but One Mom's Battle helped me immensely. I can't tell you. Even reading the other people's stories who were sending questions out just helped me so much to know that I'm not the only one going through this insanity. I'd have to look back through all my books.
Yeah. No, I've heard, and that's Tina Switham. For those that aren't familiar with that one Mom's Battle, I have heard has really been the aha moment, for a lot of women.
100%. I mean, reading her newsletters and her stories, it was just too close to home.
No, I reckon she's a great resource. I recommend anyone listening to go to onemomsbattle.com or Google Tina Swithin. She's a remarkable woman, and she's done a lot.
A warrior, yes. But informing yourself, it helps so much, because you know something's wrong. That these things are not normal, and they consume your head so much. It's so exhausting. And when you know that if you can get out there and prepare yourself and be aware of them, that helps immensely too.
Absolutely. And the other thing to remember is you were chosen, and victims of narcissistic abuse were chosen because you're smart, you're empathetic, you are witty, you're charming, you're nice, you're funny, you are open, you are an amazing person, and they literally chose you because you're amazing. And if you can remind yourself of that, if there is some weird, twisted lining to why you're here, it's to remind yourself that you are an amazing person. And so, unfortunately, you were targeted for that, but you are amazing. And so, I want everyone out there to know, if you are suffering this kind of abuse, to dig deep and remind yourself of how awesome you are, because unfortunately that's, part of the reason.
I know. And, just being an open, communicative person with these types of personalities will be used against you. I mean,
yeah,
any weakness you have that you would talk about with your partner, it all came out later in the divorce, from, I don't know, thyroid medicine, just anything, things like that. It was unbelievable. The things I read that they were using against me.
Yeah, I got to the point where I heard so many stories of women saying I stopped even apologizing to my spouse because later it would be used against me that I apologize. Like, see, instead of thank you for apologizing and let's talk this through, it was, see, you were wrong.
Exactly.
Oh my God, it's just crazy making.
Even when we first had problems, I tried to go to counseling, and the therapists that we went to they were not aware of his personality disorder. So if he said something like, she has this old family friend who everybody loves, the therapist would say, well, you need to listen to him more. He feels like a guest in the, it was just crazy. Therapy only hurt our relationship and gave him more ammunition.
Yes.
So,
and again, so a piece of advice then, that's such a great point, because, maybe folks are out there that are still in the marriage and wondering what's going on. And if you go to a therapist, all of these things are starting to sound very familiar to you. So you're right. If you're hearing that kind of advice from the therapist and you're thinking, this does not seem right. It's okay. Break up with them. Or after, if you're seeking therapy and you've been through this, make sure you ask them, like, how well are you familiar with these kind of disorders? Like, don't be shy. Find the right therapist that completely understands, because it's like being abused again, right?
It is. And that's the same with when you hire an attorney, interview them if they're aware of these kinds of character types and personality disorders. And, if you are that far along and you've noticed that you can put a name to it, you want to make sure your attorney's aware of that as well.
Oh, absolutely. They really, really have to understand, because they have to be able to be strategic with you, as you know, to anticipate. I just called it a chess game. Chess moves.
It was exactly that. I've never heard that. That's perfect. And they just want to wear you down.
It sounds almost calloused, but if you can take any of the emotion out when you are making decisions with them, because they don't have any emotion when they're making decisions about what they're going to do to you or against you. And it is the only way really to fight fire with fire, is to A, look at your divorce as a business transaction, and 100%. B, just try to make your next chess move as unemotional, as possible.
Yeah, because you think you're going to have some sort of emotional justice, and you're just not with a person like that.
Right. No, you're just not. And really quick, I want to go back, because I want to talk about documenting. If you just could quickly say, you said you journaled. What are your recommendations on documenting? Because it is such a big deal.
It is. I mean, knowing we were going to talk today, I had to go back and look at a lot of it. So it was amazing how much before the divorce, I would write a lot about how I felt, because I felt so unhappy inside. And it was almost like I felt depressed. I wasn't depressed, but I felt so sad and alone to be lying next to someone who just shows no empathy. And you're 9 months pregnant. They show no empathy. They went to sleep when I went into labor. My mom stayed up with me. I mean, it's just it's so hard that journaling helps you just get it out of your system and put it to paper. And then, of course, once things went really downhill, it was really important for me to keep that habit in place, but it definitely helped me in defending myself.
Okay.
And having things to look back to, because your brain is so overloaded that you forget. Even coming back today, I was just like, I think we somehow try to put it away.
Yes.
You want to forget, and journaling helps you keep it, because if you do have kids, you never know when they may rear their head again and you need to go back to court. So whatever you do pre and post, not only is it good for your psyche just to get it out on paper and try to get it out of yourself and process it, but you do have a point of reference to keep track of the insanity.
Sure. No, it's such great advice. And I know you said you journaled. I know some people are afraid to have those things lying around. And I have did a podcast with a woman from the National Network to End Domestic Violence. And there are apps out there as well. That one is DocuSafe, but you can get an app and type things, into your phone, and then it's, an app they can't get into. In fact, I believe this one even goes dark if you just set your phone down.
That's a great tip. That's a
Yeah.
great tip. I mean, it's something I've passed on to my daughter. She journals, and, we found out a lot of things that way just because she didn't want to talk about what was happening in the house when he was there. But I think it helped her as well, just to write.
Well, great advice. Thank you so much. And I know, is there, I already asked you for advice on, what you would tell people, but is there one thing you want people out there to know that may be going through a divorce with a narcissist now, and they're just in the throes of it? What do they have to look forward to when they get to the other side?
I can just tell you, just keep going, because it does end. And even if it's still hard now, it's nowhere near as hard as before. And you have your freedom, and you will have access, hopefully, to a new independent future, because that was really the hardest thing, the financial independence on top of the whole abuse. To have not to depend on that person anymore, is just, it's such a relief, and you have space in your head again for other things. And it's amazing how much your children absorb when you're going through that, now they can see you smile, and you're just a freer, happier person. And just don't give up is all you can do. It's so hard. I know it's easy to say don't give up, but just keep going, because it will end, and there is light after a long divorce like this. I can tell you after 4 years.
Awesome. Amy, thank you so much. It's just been so great to have you come on and just tell your story and give people out there hope. And like you said, just don't give up, because there are a number of us out here, and we just want to help and be there for you.
Knowing you're not the only one is huge.
It's huge. It's huge.
Don't be alone.
All right. Thank you again, Amy. Take care. All right. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate it too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.